I have some more comments on the situation between Pacific Bioscience and Illumina. And on another note, today I want to talk about quantum computing. What's going on with quantum computing? What is what is what does the sector look like from an investor perspective? This is an Not Even Wrong podcast. It's January 14th, 2022. This is Krim Delco. Since the last update, we are up 1.75%. The market is down 8 basis points. For the year, we are down 5.1%. The market is down 2.15%. We are underperforming by 2.95%. Before I go into the quantum computing conversation, just real quick, I did some more work on the Pacific Bioscience versus Illumina versus other competitor situation. And like I said in my episode that was dedicated to this subject, there is a threat to Pacific Bioscience from Illumina in exactly the field where Pacific Bioscience has become the leader, which is long read sequencing. Now, what's going on specifically is the following. Illumina made an acquisition, and that company that they bought is supposed to be the Illumina long read business. The CEO of Pacific Bioscience was asked about this new threat, and his answer was not very convincing, to be honest, and I think that's part of the reason why the stock is down 30% year to date. I have to say Pacific Bioscience probably needs to have a little bit of a better message. But having said that, I also feel that the reaction of Pacific Bioscience was relatively nonchalant, because I think what I said in my episode when I spoke about this a day or two ago, eventually the companies that are leaders and disruptors will win. So, and I think PacBio feels that they have that safety of cushion. Now, cushion of safety. Now, what's going on specifically is that Pacific Bioscience revolutionized the genetic sequencing business by doing real-time reading of the DNA, and that is very difficult to do. They have a patented technology which allows them to do that. What Illumina is doing short sequencing and then tying it together with software. That's basically what they're doing. And according to the PacBio CEO, who used to be the CFO of Illumina, so he was inside of Illumina, and he said, look, I remember during my tenure, we tried to do something about long reads. He obviously is not saying, but they also tried to buy PacBio, so they really understand the importance of long reads for many applications in the medical field and genomic field, but they couldn't do it. They just didn't have the tech. That's why they wanted to buy PacBio. Fast forward, Illumina bought a company. That company is kind of patching together a solution that potentially could be the solution for long reads by tying together short reads. This is, in a nutshell, what's going on. The PacBio CEO said that he doesn't think that it's going to be definitely not better and better cost than what they have. As far as success is concerned, he's not sure. He said that potentially it could be used for things like bacteria and shorter sequences, but definitely not for, let's say, humans and that kind of thing. So I think this type of posturing is certainly normal in situations like that. You have the CEO of the startup saying, we're on top of things, we will win this fight, and you have the street relatively concerned. And I think one of the big insights from the JP Morgan conference, which was going on this week, is that this is the 800-pound gorilla within the space. Now, again, I don't have the detailed technical insight, but my feeling is that this is one of those things where in the end you will have both companies building new solutions, increasing the market and gaining market share relative to either other applications or just creating new demand and therefore growing together. This is my feeling. So we're not concerned about this. The concern we have is that I think the PacBio management, having come from Illumina, is kind of like a bit incestuous here. But it is what it is, and we certainly would like to see an Elon Musk in this space be much better, but we don't. We don't have an Elon Musk. We have relatively pedestrian managers who run these companies that are founded by scientists who actually don't want to be business people. So this is generally the situation in biotech, and it's also the situation in the gene sequencing business. Having said that, of course, it's still great what's going on, and it's still incredibly laudable that we are able to lower the cost, and no matter how pedestrian they might seem, maybe they're not Elon Musk, but let's say the CEO of PACB has a clear message, higher value, lower cost, and this is what resonates with us. Now, I want to use this as a segue to the conversation about quantum computing. Quantum computing has been a sector that we've been interested in for years now. We've worked quite a bit on it. Recently, we've kind of dropped the ball a bit on it. We follow, of course, what's going on, but we're not necessarily actively doing research. And I think the main reason is that, for lack of better words, what's going on in quantum computing, it's a bit like, imagine electric cars without Tesla. This is what's going on. So you have a bunch of insecure scientists who do good work in the science field, but don't really know how to apply this to business. And then you have finance people who are pushing them to, be vocal, to say, well, we have the next best thing since the invention of the wheel and all those things. And unfortunately, we've already seen a SPAC, and we probably will see another one. So SPAC deals, which are just not good situation. Let's leave it at that. I don't want to discuss this too deep, but I don't like to see scientists being pushed by finance people into SPAC deals and go public that way. That's not a good thing. And maybe once in a while it works out, but in my view, a company should go through the normal process of founder and then build up a company, build a real business, maybe be supported by VCs, that's okay, and then go public properly. This, in my view, is just that evolution needs to happen. It's a little bit like giving democracy to countries that never had any kind of freedom. You can't just go too fast from founder to IPO, and the SPAC shortcut is not a very good thing. So we've seen two companies. One is IonQ, and the other is Rigetti Computing, that is about to go public through a SPAC. Both, again, we're very unhappy about this. The companies are very solid companies, but they are pushing it too fast. It's not a good situation. We'd like to see them take a little bit more time and grow organically. Now, having said that, let's get back to the conversation. What's going on in quantum computing? Quantum computing is like, imagine electric cars, batteries, and all that without Tesla. So you have progress, you have scientific progress, but there's nobody pushing. There's nobody building a culture of innovation and disruption. It's a little bit haphazard here and there. Scientists are not good business people. Business people are not good scientists. And this is, unfortunately, the situation we're in. And the VCs are taking certainly their role, particularly with Rigetti. Vijay Pandey, one of the general partners at A16Z, that I respect quite a bit, one of the few ones that I respect. He was an investor with Rigetti. I don't know if he's still involved and if he's on the board or not. But anyway, I just want to say the VCs play their role. They're not useless. They could, in some way or form, bridge the gap between scientists and finance people, but we need entrepreneurs. That's the message here. And we don't have that in the quantum space. Maybe it's too complicated. We need some sort of a CRISPR moment in quantum. We need a simplification. We can't have this massive investments, massive overhead to get stuff done within the context of quantum computing. In my view, this is the main problem. This is what's going on in quantum computing. So we have this, imagine where electric cars would be without Tesla. We'd see some progress, nice press releases, journal articles, maybe even some prototypes, but nothing will change. Nothing will change whatsoever. We need more aggressive people, entrepreneurs. A very good example is Emily Laprousse. She is the CEO of Twist. I like her a lot in terms of very aggressive, very outspoken, very growth-oriented, a real entrepreneur, disruptive entrepreneur. I can't vouch for full legitimacy here. There's a risk that maybe we will fall on our nose. They're doing a lot of business with Ginkgo Bio. Ginkgo Bio is being scrutinized by short sellers. So there's some obscure maybe shade of maybe this whole thing is a little bit of a hoax. Now, I don't think Twist is a hoax, but the growth and the prospects could be a hoax. And but nevertheless, I like her stance, I like her aggressiveness, and I'm willing to take the bet, certainly with a modest size position, but I'm willing to take that bet. I think it's worth it. I think if Twist is what I think they are, and it's the right thing, then this company has enormous potential. And this is what's missing in the quantum space again. What we need is, we need a Tesla for quantum. The same way we need a Tesla for CRISPR, but at least the CRISPR technology itself is very democratizing, and that's very good. We don't have that yet in quantum. It could happen. We need sort of the Intel of quantum computing, if you want. That would be another analogy. The same thing happened with Intel. We had the invention of the transistor by Bill Shockley, but then we had these entrepreneurs. I forgot the renegades from Fairchild Semiconductor. They split up, they built Intel, and they created this amazing company. And Intel might have their problems today, but certainly Intel built the computing industry in Silicon Valley. And we need something like that in quantum computing. We don't have it, but nevertheless, the science is progressing, and things are happening. It's not all just vaporware. Maybe I should also mention we have the large companies like Google and Alibaba and all these companies also in quantum computing, IBM. The problem there, of course, is institutional complacency. We have, like I joke, Google people, they have to organize their ski trips and then maybe do some work on the side. Unfortunately, that's the case when you sit on a pool of money like Google people do, and when you have access to resources at that scale, then maybe the urgency is not that much there, and I don't know, we just don't see the urgency, the drive to instantiate science into engineering products, because this is what it takes for investors to make money in the space. So while quantum computing as a concept could proliferate, and people like David Deutsch are helping to proliferate the space, we need people to instantiate real products and services through technology, and it's happening, but again, it's just way too slow. Maybe lastly, actually I should have done that in the beginning, but I still want to do it now. It doesn't matter. What actually is quantum computing? So the concept of quantum computing is based on quantum physics. It's based on the observations that elementary particles have quantum behavior, where they are in a quantum state, and being in that quantum state allows a certain manipulation of that particle in a way that you can use quantum computing or quantum algorithms. You could use those algorithms with an underlying hardware that we call quantum computer. So the same way in a classical computer, we have a classical computer with certain hardware, the chip, the transistor, and all that, and then we have algorithms that work based on that type of hardware, and those algorithms, when you write those algorithms, you know exactly what kind of computations you can do. So the same thing is on the quantum side. There's particularly two effects which are new on the quantum side that you don't have in the classical side. One is the interference, and the other is entanglement. And those two things can be used in quantum computing, quantum algorithms, to do certain types of computations, not just faster in classical. Sometimes you couldn't even do it with classical, or it would take light years to do it. But with quantum computing and a clever design of quantum algorithms, you could do certain computations much faster, and therefore there's a whole new world opening up here in terms of what's possible. Now, people are working on quantum computers, the hardware. The problem there is, how do you keep particles, how do you keep any kind of substance in a quantum state long enough so you can do computation? The solution is that you do you build those machines, and then you do what's called error correction. So you have quantum qubits, which is the equivalent of a chip, of a transistor in the classical space. So you have a qubit, and if you have let's say 1,000 qubits, then you can use a lot of those qubits just to do error correction, so you might only have 2 or 3 logical qubits. In the quantum space, you often hear talks about, oh, we built a machine with 5, 10, 50, 100 qubits. The question is, how many logical qubits, how many qubits do you actually have that you can do real quantum computation on? Because a lot of those qubits are just being used to do error correction. So this is kind of the, let's say, the holy grail of quantum computing in a very, very short, concise way described. People are working on hardware. IonQ has ion traps. There's superconductors, which are cooled down to almost 0 Kelvin. and those sort of things. So you try to find the right hardware, and I think rightly so, people in the industry are saying, look, right now the problem is still hardware. Eventually we'll solve the hardware problem, and then it's going to be a bit like in the regular computing industry where we don't really talk about the hardware. We don't really care that much about what kind of, are we using silicon or germanium and all that stuff. There's a bit of hardware talk again because of AI, but generally hardware has sort of been the cousin that everybody takes for granted, and everybody's focusing on software. So similarly, people expect a similar situation on the quantum side. To summarize what's going on with quantum computing, I think very promising. We can do new things with quantum algorithms. If we have quantum computers, we can have quantum computers. The laws of physics allow us to have them, but we don't have what we need is a Tesla. We need somebody to drive the kind of urgency and culture of entrepreneurship that Elon Musk has in Tesla and SpaceX. We don't have that in the quantum space, and I think that's why it's a little bit stagnating. Still worth looking at, and we believe that there's enormous potential there. But as investors, we'd like to see sort of an Elon Musk of quantum computing. This would be amazing. Thank you.